Today we are entering the wonderful world of acrylic. And so today we're going to be taking a mini deep dive into working with acrylic, properly cutting, bending, and in the end, my goal is to make some really cool projects. Interesting. Anyway. Hi everyone, my name is Rachel and welcome back to TheSorryGirls, or welcome if you're new here on this channel. Pretty much all we do is DIY and design. Sometimes big room makeover projects, sometimes smaller DIY projects, and pretty much everything in between. Today we are entering the wonderful world of acrylic. Plexiglass, lucite, perspex, acrylite. These are all just brand names for acrylic plastic. Poly, methyl, methacrylate, if you want to get sexy and scientific with it. But at the end of the day, it's all just acrylic plastic. Now, acrylic decor is making a re-immersion into being a trendy home good, but it actually rose to popularity in the 1960s and 70s when we started seeing mid-century modern design. There are elements of acrylic that just scream modernism, especially for the mid-century age, and I still think that's relevant today. And the whole idea for this video was actually sparked when I saw this video. Here's a little snippet of it by All the Peaches Please on Instagram. I think it's just chef's kiss. And so today we're going to be taking a mini deep dive into working with acrylic, properly cutting, bending, and in the end, my goal is to make some really cool projects. If you don't know this already, here at TheSorryGirls, we love to keep sustainability in mind, and this rings true when we take on any new project. Now, I know there's not really any world where plastic is ideal, and so my goal today is to only make things out of pre-loved acrylic pieces, and I'll explain more of how you can get your hands on some. So one option to get your acrylic is to actually check out your local acrylic supplier. I was surprised to find about 3 or 4 of these close to me, so hopefully you have one close to you too. But basically, these places take large sheets and they'll cut them down for customers, and then they have these scrap pieces. So earlier today, I went to my local acrylic supplier, and it was really fun to kind of see all the varieties of acrylic that they sold. It comes in many different colors and textures. Another added bonus to buying these pieces that they're sold at a discounted rate. So I feel like everyone's winning in this scenario. Okay. So I have to pick through everything. I guess, I don't know what I was expecting. I was hoping to get more colored pieces here, but lots of clear, so that's great. If you don't happen to have an acrylic supplier near you, I would even check out your local hardware store. A lot of the time they sell acrylic sheets and they'll cut them down for customers as well as sell those scrap pieces at a discounted rate. Did you hear about the discount? Did you hear about the discount? I don't know, I love a good deal. A final option could be checking out your local thrift stores or secondhand online sellers. We have obviously Facebook Marketplace. Here in Canada, we have Kijiji, there's Craigslist, all those good things. So the next thing we're going to tackle are methods to cut our acrylic material. There are so many different methods to cutting acrylic, so I'm just going over the ones that are most accessible to probably most of you guys at home. So the first method we're going to go over is called the score and snap method, and we're going to be using this. Okay, so what I have here is a plastic cutting knife, and you can most likely find these at your local hardware store. So I have protective eyewear on. This is especially for the snap portion. I also have here a metal ruler. You either can just press down really, really hard, or hopefully you have some clamps and you can clamp it down to the table. So now I'm just going to apply even pressure with my knife, and we're probably going to do about 6 to 12 passes depending on how thick your material is. Also, you want to get about maybe just over halfway before we go to snap it. So this method is super useful for specifically like thinner pieces of acrylic material. So take your time with this step. I do want to mention, if you are planning to use a utility knife, you do want to be really careful and go really slowly. I have heard that you can actually use the dull side, which is interesting. Let's give it a try. Don't apply too much pressure. I would make really shallow cuts at a time. Realistically, yes, you could use the razor side, but what I'm saying is just be very, very careful that it doesn't jump out on you. Okay, so I tried it so you don't have to. I definitely like the plastic cutter over the backside of the razor blade. I do think it's just worth picking up this blade. It was only about $9 Canadian dollars. And because acrylic can be expensive, you know, you don't want to risk accidentally scratching it. So, plastic knife wins. Okay, for our next method, when making longer cuts on thicker pieces, this is when you probably want to consider using a power tool. So I have my circular saw here. So one of the main things to consider when using a power tool on your acrylic materials is that the tool itself causes a lot of vibration. And this can be too aggressive for our material, and in turn it wants to chip and crack and kind of like hack away at the edge. So what I recommend is using a crosscut blade. Now this is designed to produce a smooth cut without splintering or tearing. This type of blade usually has 60 to 80 teeth, and the higher amount of teeth count that you have means that each tooth removes less material. The first thing I want to do to this piece is just cut off all this kind of excess parts. So a way to deal with a lot of the vibration from the power tool is to actually put something on top of your piece and clamp it down really tightly to deal with that. So last couple of important things to mention here is that you want to start your blade before you reach your material. Also, if your piece did come with this protective coating on top, it's really tempting to want to peel it off, but it is important to keep it on because it helps with fraying. But if your piece doesn't have this protective coating, you can just add a piece of tape. You've seen us do this many times before with wood. So this next cut I'm going to do is going to be for some projects that I have planned for later on. So the third method we're going to be going over today is with our jigsaw. This is great if you want to do any kind of detailed cuts, curved corners, round edges, wavy, unique cuts. Now, there is a specific blade for plexiglass that you can install right into your jigsaw, and it literally says plexiglass on it. It doesn't say acrylic for whatever reason. It says the brand name. Interesting. Anyway, there are a couple important things to mention here when using the jigsaw. It does have a high vibration, so it's going to want to bounce around. If you're cutting a thicker piece of acrylic, you should be fine just clamping it down to your table. But if you're cutting a more thin piece, then you're going to probably want to clamp it to a scrap piece of wood or MDF. And that's what I'm going to show you right now, actually. So I don't know if you guys remember this. In a recent video, I reinvented and reimagined old TSG DIYs that Kelsey and Becky both had done in the past. And I left the edges of this sign as it came, but I'm thinking it'd be really fun to cut this shape that you see I've drawn out here with a whiteboard marker. Okay, so I am gonna clamp my acrylic to my scrap MDF, as well as then clamp the MDF to the table. So just like before, we want to go really slowly, really carefully, take our time with this cut line. Working in small parts, just cutting away portions at a time and rotating my piece on the table. That's how I made it through the whole board. You can see here where I was lacking in MDF. It was really prone to chipping and cracking along the edge here. Okay, so I have my oblong shape all cut out, and this looks great. And that's all we're gonna tackle for today. Tomorrow we'll start to bend our acrylic and make some really interesting pieces. Oh. Good morning. Now it's time to start making some things with the acrylic. And we've used acrylic quite a few times, I feel like, in past videos here at TheSorryGirls. I mean, you saw the neon sign yesterday that I did in a recent video. We have this wall behind me. Becky and I last summer actually filled in this whole space in the wall and drywalled it up and then used acrylic to make the windows. I don't know if you saw this recent TikTok, and if you haven't checked us out on TikTok, definitely do that. We made this giant clearboard wall for our producer Nina, and basically what it is, it's just a giant whiteboard, but instead it's clear. Nina loves whiteboards. Maybe you are, maybe you aren't familiar with our Loft Vibes series where Kelsey and Becky use acrylic to actually make this amazing faux glass paneled room divider. We are yet to make any actual furniture or home goods for that matter with the acrylic, so that's why I'm really excited to make some stuff with you guys today, and I think that's all I have for this morning. Let's get started. So let's make our first DIY. I'm gonna take this piece of acrylic that we cut down yesterday. I just shortened it to 30 inches, but it is about 9 inches wide. Also, before adding any heat to this, you wanna make sure that you remove the plastic layer that is protecting your acrylic. So the first step I'm gonna do is mark where I want my bend lines to be. So on this piece specifically, I'm going to mark 6 inches in on each side. Okay, so to bend our acrylic material, I'm actually gonna go in with a heat gun. The one I'm using, this one's from Wagner. It has 2 heat settings, one that is 750 degrees and another one that is 1100 degrees. I'm gonna be using it on the highest setting today. This heat gun is pretty much your standard heat gun used for DIY projects, paint removal, things like that. To my knowledge, we're not heating up this acrylic material to a high enough degree that it's going to be emitting any fumes or melting or anything, just enough that it just wants to bend ever so slightly. But also, it is a heat gun, so use common sense and safety first. You have to be careful. Okay, so I have my piece of acrylic sandwiched here between a scrap piece of wood with a very straight edge and the workbench. And I have my piece of wood lined up with the line that we just made. So when you're heating up the acrylic, you want to hold your heat tool about 4 to 5 inches away from the acrylic. If you are too close to your acrylic, it's actually going to start bubbling on the surface. It's going to take about maybe 4 to 5 minutes of heating up the actual acrylic before it's ready to bend. And I'm just slowly going back and forth with the gun across the line. As you can see, this is super straightforward and pretty easy. I just use my square tool to check my angles, and let's switch it over and do the other side. And just like that, we have a laptop stand, desk organizer. There's just so much opportunity here. Okay, so the next project I want to take on is actually a magazine holder. So the piece that I'm using, and it is 13 inches wide by 48 inches long. So I want to try out making a more rounded bend than what we've already been doing. And to achieve this, I'm going to be using a wooden dowel. And the dowel I'm using is about 2 inches thick. So first, remember to remove your protective plastic. And then for my magazine rack, I'm going to first make some guidelines on each fourth. So in the middle and then half both sides. So I also drew a reference line on the top part of my dowel so that I could line up the middle line we made. Again, just letting the weight of the plastic pretty much do the bending, not trying to force it too much. Okay, so to do the next 2 bends, I actually propped up this piece of wood on the edge of our table with some F-clamps. And this is going to make it easier to take this next side and bend it over to do basically a 45-degree angle turn. And now we have this super cool magazine rack. You know what? Let's put some magazine in here and take a closer look. I don't want to get all my nasty fingerprints. Like, I feel like we've been seeing so much of already. Okay, so the next thing I want to make is going to be of a much larger scale. To circle back to the video that I brought up at the beginning of this video, so she did this really cool waterfall console table that has a magazine holder in it. I'm not going to do mine exactly like she did. I've seen a lot of this style in glass coffee tables where it has this lovely waterfall edge. The piece that I'm working with is 96 inches long, it's a foot wide and 4.4 millimeters thick. For any sort of decor projects or furniture projects, I wouldn't go anything thinner than this. So similar to what we just did prior to this, I'm going to first bend the sides. So I'm marking my table leg height to 20 inches. Whatever you do, don't force the plastic to bend. If you wait long enough, it will get malleable on its own and you just kind of feel it out and just ease it up. I like to turn on a fan to help it cool a little faster. Okay, so now we're left with this very long sort of console table, but the next step is going to be bending the middle portion for our magazine holder. And I'm gonna be using this is just an old shipping container tube, and you can basically use anything cylindrical to help you kind of figure out your shape. So this one's nice, it's 5 inches in diameter, and I think it's a great shape to start creating our bend. So the next step's going to be creating another line guide to work our material around. I'm just going in with the blue marker this time so we can see the line a bit better, but I'm marking 20 inches in from, doesn't matter which side. Now, the reason I actually did the legs first is because when we go to do the middle part, it's gonna help support our table upright. Similar to before, I'm just gonna apply my heat gun to the inside of the table, and I'm going to bend it around this tube, and I'm pretty much gonna like fold this whole thing. Now, this is gonna be a wider amount of space, so just kind of try and share the heat and evenly apply it, because you don't want to experience some warping in the board. You want to evenly distribute the heat stream. Because of how large my piece is, I did have Rochelle and Baljeet kind of jump in and help me handle it, and pretty much just wrapped it around anything that's cylindrical, also this dowel, whatever you can get your hands on. So the last step to finish off our console table is going to be adding 2 more right angles about here and here. You want them symmetrical on each side of the little dip that you've made. I'm probably gonna make mine about 10 inches deep so it comfortably fits some magazines. Okay, so I just have our piece supported here on some paint cans, and my plan is to do this next bend and send this leg underneath the table. Yeah, not the most structurally sound thing I've ever made. When I tried this at a smaller scale, it worked out. When I tried it at a larger scale with the thin piece that we did have, we're compromising some things here. Not all is lost though. One thing we do not lack here at TheSorryGirls is optimism, and that's obviously how this project got started. I do think I can find a way to continue to add bends to make this a bit more stable. I just, I wanted to give this big guy a go. What I definitely would do differently next time is use a piece that was thicker, so minimum 6 millimeters thick, especially for something of this scale. Obviously the 4.5 millimeter works on smaller projects, maybe not so much for bigger projects, especially ones where I'm like expecting to put weight in here. But anyway, now I'm gonna keep working on this, but let's see how it looks in its final form. All I did was shorten the legs with a couple bends to add some additional support, but I really love how this coffee table turned out. Now we've seen a lot with the clear acrylic, but I ended up messing around with some colored pieces as well. I used this piece of neon pink to create a little wall shelf that helps organize my wardrobe unit. And this gorgeous shiny black piece now works as a desk organizer for the office. Honestly guys, I am just loving how customizable these DIYs are. Let me know in the comments below what you would make with the acrylic. The possibilities feel endless. Thank you guys so much for watching today's video. If you want to see more things we've made with acrylic, check out this huge wall divider that I mentioned earlier. You don't want to miss it.
I'm Becky, one half of the TheSorryGirls, and Kelsey, the other half of Team TSG, is away from the office, and there's this huge DIY project that's been on the to-do list for way too long, so my plan is to surprise her with it when she comes back. What the? Morning! Good morning!